Right, I've got some excellent new equipment to show you today. If you're into PCP air rifles or paintball guns or whatever, I've got these bottles here and various components from Banggood, and I'm making up a fill station. In fact, as you can see here, I'm making up two filling stations because I'm making one for my son as well, who's into target shooting, and he has a similar rifle to this one. And I was really pleased when I actually found all this equipment on the Banggood site. I never knew that they actually sold these pressure cylinders and equipment. The bottles you can get in 0.5 litre capacity, or you can get it in a slightly smaller version, which is 0.38 litres for a lower cost. The bottles are made of aluminium and they're stamped on the side here, rated at 207 bar, which is about 3000 psi, which is excellent for the BSA Ultra. I only pump mine up to about 180 bar, which is 2755 psi, and I get 35 shots at that pressure. And the BSA Ultra can actually be pressurized to 200 bar, but if you want the best consistency of shots, it's best to stay around 180 bar, unless of course you get a regulator for it. So I actually bought my bottle with the filling regulator already fitted, or it was in the box as well. It just screws into this one here. It's a 5/8 UNF thread, and this one's rated at 4500 psi, so you could actually use it on a higher pressure bottle. So you can buy the bottles on their own at a very low cost, the regulator as well for a slightly higher cost. I think it works out with the regulator and the bottle is about £53 at the moment, which is an excellent price for a filling station. And to complete the filling station, all you need is a regulator tap or on-off valve. This one has a knob on the top here. There's two different types, but they're both the same thing really. The difference is that this one has a larger gold anodized knob, while this one has a black anodized one, which is a bit smaller in diameter. And then you need a three-way adapter. This one's 1/8 BSP in each port, and I did get female thread on this end here, or on the side here. I could have got one with the male 1/8 BSP thread, which would have been better because that would have cut out using one of these unions and would have screwed straight into this one, but because I didn't get that, I shall use this one. And lastly, you need some Ptfe tape and a pressure relief valve. Now I couldn't find a high pressure relief valve on the Banggood site, so I actually bought one on eBay. This is a new type which I like. It's a one that you can actually depress rather than having a knob to unscrew, and that's a very good little unit. If you have good knowledge of pneumatic equipment like I have myself, you could actually make up your own pressure relief valve, but if you haven't got good knowledge of high pressure pneumatic equipment, then leave it well alone. And at some point I do want to show how to actually make some high pressure relief valves and other valves on the lathes. They're very easy to make up out of stainless steel, but there's certain things that you really need to know on the way they release, the threads, and the actual strength needed to make them operate safely. So to start the assembly, first check that the bottle is thoroughly clean. Mine was, but just check that there's nothing that has got in there from transportation or whatever. Then take the inlet regulator and put a light smear of silicone grease around the O-ring, and this O-ring is already fitted on the regulator when you get it, and it will seal in this counterbore at the end of the bottle. So screw that one all the way home. And this inlet regulator has a non-return valve here which you connect the filling coupling up to, and it has a closely knit metal filter in this one, so no dirt can actually get into that one, which is excellent. And there's a little rubber cap here which pushes down over that one to keep it clean when it's not in use. So now we come to the on-off valve. Make sure that the screw is screwed right the way out, and check that it's thoroughly clean again. The O-ring on the regulator is already fitted to this one, which will go up inside this and seal. Put a light smear of grease around that one. Incidentally, the pin in this one screws down when you actually screw the knob there, and it depresses this valve here, this brass pin, and that allows the air to come through. Comes through this valve here and out the outlet on this side. So screw that one down onto the silicone greased O-ring. Next you get the three-way 1/8 BSP adapter, and I did say earlier that you can get one with a male thread here. Don't get that one, because you actually do need this one with a union to get the amount of standoff on this side here so that the hose will actually clear the bottle. So like I say, get the three-way 1/8 BSP adapter with 3 female ports. And then I get the 1/8 BSP male union and put the Ptfe tape on that one. Note the way that I'm actually running that tape around the thread. It only goes on one way, otherwise when you screw the union into the port here, it will unscrew the, or take the Ptfe tape off as you screw it in. So put it on one way and make sure there's no loose Ptfe tape over the end here. Screw that one into this side port. If it's too loose when you're screwing it in, take it back out and put a little bit more Ptfe tape on it so that you can actually feel that it's quite tight when you're screwing it in, and when you screw it home then it will seal nicely. And it also helps to keep the union solid in position. And you can trim off any bits that look messy later. So next I take my Ptfe tape again and put some on this side of the union. And that one screws in the side port of the on-off valve. And again, if it's too easy to screw in, take it out and put a bit more tape on it, and then screw it down nice and tight so that you get it in line with the bottle. Next I get a 1/8 BSP coupling, high pressure coupling, and you can get these on Banggood as well. Make sure you get the 1/8 BSP one, because there's various different threads on those. There's one that's very similar, much bigger thread when you look at it. So get the 1/8 BSP and be sure of that. And put some Ptfe tape on that one. and that one screws into the lower half of that adapter. And again, make sure it's quite a nice tight fit on that Ptfe. So next you get the pressure relief valve, whatever one you choose to put on it, and obviously this one has 1/8 BSP thread again. This one actually comes with a self-sealing plastic end on it, which will actually seal against the shoulder in the three-way adapter. If not, obviously you have to put the Ptfe tape on that one. So I'll screw this one down and I'll see how well that actually seals in a minute, and actually tighten that one on to the plastic seal. I can feel it going down nice and tight, not over tight. I'm going to just leave it there so it's in line that way. And you can actually use like a sealant on these, a Loctite sealant rather than Ptfe, to be more permanent, but I actually like using Ptfe tape because I can actually take it apart at any time. And you can actually use some heat to get Loctite sealant apart, but I don't like using heat on anything like this. So next, the coupling hose assembly, which will connect onto the rifle adapter, will push up in the quick release on this adapter here. And that's the unit basically finished. So we have the air inlet non-return valve in which to connect the pump. I use an ordinary hand pump, the Chinese one I've got, and an English version of it. This is the one here that I've got. They're very low cost. You can get them for about £30 I think. I got mine on eBay. And this has a quick release coupling on the end with the adapter to go on this one here, or the coupling to go on that one there. And the pump is actually made of stainless steel and brass, and it's, like I say, really good quality. It's water cooled as well. And I have actually got an English pump as well, which I got from a car boot sale for £5. I couldn't believe my luck at the time. It's a pump that costs over £140 to actually buy new. Plus, if you've got a bit of money to spend, they're quite expensive. You can actually get a Chinese electric pump to pump these up now. And at first I think they didn't get a very good report, but now they've improved them, and they're very good. So maybe I'll get one of those one day. And having one of these fill stations is great if you're actually going out for the day. You can actually fill one of these up and fill your rifle up before you go. Put this in a haversack, and then you have probably about 3 fills from it. I haven't actually tested the bottle on this one to see how many fills I get on the rifle, but I'll test that out very soon and let you know the results. Also, when you actually go on the Banggood site for all these parts, I'll put the links below for the actual parts and components needed. They are listed as paintball adapters and bottles, so they're not actually listed as PCP or air rifle components. And having said that, they're actually the proper thing really to actually use for a paintball gun as well. Also, you can actually use things like this for pressure testing. So you can actually connect couplings or anything you actually make on the lathe to see what seals you've got on certain equipment. You can actually pressurize things underwater and see whether they're leaking or not. So they're a really good piece of equipment to have. And you can even pressurize them and use them as a very small portable airline in certain situations wherever needed. And another thing worth mentioning, when you've fitted it all together like this, it's worth actually pumping it up to a certain pressure, say halfway at first, and holding this end underwater to check for any leaks or whatever. And on the Banggood site as well, if you want to use the larger firefighting type of bottles, they do this unit here, all stainless steel with the coupling already fitted, and this one has the pressure relief valve on the back here, or the pressure release valve should I say. That one's an oil filled gauge as well, which is excellent. There's some excellent PCP and Paintball high pressure gear on the Banggood site. So now I've pumped the bottle up to about 1000 psi and released the pressure on the pump. Then I can take the coupling off. So at this stage now the bottle is pressurised with a test pressure of 1000 psi or just under. But you must remember that this part isn't pressurised at this moment. These couplings, these high pressure couplings, are through bore. They're unlike the ordinary compressor couplings that go up to about 100 psi for ordinary compressors. They're ones that seal when you release them or take them off from the male part. This one, like I said, is through bore, so if I screwed the tap now the air would come out. So to test this part before putting it on the rifle, I use one of these female 1/8 PSP connectors. I got these from Banggood as well. You can get a packet of different ends. This one has a nice shoulder on it at this end here, so I'm going to use a 1/8 BSP blanking plug with a 1/8 BSP dowty and screw that one in and tighten that up on the dowty seal. Nice and tight so it actually seals on that dowty. Then that one can be put in the end of the coupling. Make sure that it's connected. Then I can operate the valve, and that allows the 1000 psi to go in this part here, and I can actually put that underwater and check for any leaks on any of the joins. And then when I do that, I back off the tap again into the off position, and you've got to remember that although it's in the off position, there's pressure in this pipe here still of 1000 psi, and this is just like it would be connected to the rifle. Before you actually unconnect it here from this adapter that I've just put in here, or the rifle, you must depress the pressure release valve or unscrew it, whatever one you've got on there, and let that pressure out, and then it's safe to remove the coupling end. And then I'd put another 1000 psi in it and do that same check again, and then finally another 1000 psi, so there's 3000 psi overall in there, and do the final test. And just before I finish, I'd just like to mention something that when I actually first got this one and put this on-off valve onto the lower regulator and started pumping it up, obviously it was in the off position with the screw fully wound out. I found that there was air leaking out as I was pumping it up, and what I did with that was back this tap off by a quarter of a turn so that the gauges were in line there, and then I pumped it up and operated it a few times, let the air out, and then backed it off again, and then I screwed it right the way tight home, and that seated the tap properly, and now when I pump it up it doesn't leak at all in the fully off position. So that's one thing to be aware of. There's nothing wrong with the tap, it's just that it needs the assembly pressurizing a bit and working in, but you may not have that problem at all. And I did notice that the black one did actually screw out further, so I don't think it would do that. Another thing you can do if you want to, it's only an option, you can actually make a spacer up to go in between here out of PVC or brass or whatever, so that when the gauge comes down, or the on-off valve comes down onto the regulator here, it stops there obviously, but you can actually make a spacer up so that it actually stops there, so that the gauges are in the right angle position to one another, and maybe make it look a bit better. But that's only an option, you don't really need to do that at all. And one other thing, you can actually get like neoprene covers. I haven't seen whether they do one for this actual size, but you could actually make yourself one up out of a piece of neoprene, an old wetsuit or whatever, cut a piece out, or the sleeve or something, to go over that aluminium and protect it in the field.